Stop. Before you scroll past, before you tell yourself this is just another video, before you do what you have done 1,000 times, which is to look away the moment something begins to speak too directly to your soul, I need you to stay. Because you are not here by accident, not tonight, not with this title finding you at this exact moment in your life, not with your finger hovering, then pausing, then clicking, as if some deeper part of you already knew what these words were about to reveal. You are here because you possess a rare psychological frequency, a frequency that maybe 1 in 100 human beings ever carry in this world, a frequency forged in a very particular kind of fire, the fire of a childhood in which you had to feel everything, understand everything, absorb everything, while receiving almost nothing in return. You are what some in the deep work of trauma and psychology have come to call a trauma-born empath loner. And if that phrase just struck something in your chest, if it felt strangely like a name you have been waiting your whole life to be called, then you already know that this conversation is for you. For over 45 years in the world of trauma, addiction, and human suffering, the same silent figure has kept appearing in therapy rooms. Different faces, different countries, different stories, but underneath the same soul. A person who feels too much, who sees too much, who has spent their whole life alone in a crowd. A person who was born sensitive into an environment that could not hold that sensitivity, and who slowly, brilliantly, tragically learned to survive by disappearing inside themselves. You survived by becoming your own world. You survived by needing no one. You survived by feeling everything for everyone while showing almost nothing to anyone. And this is why the world tells you to be careful with people like you. Not because you are dangerous, but because your very existence is a mirror. And most people cannot bear what they see in that mirror. They cannot bear your depth. They cannot bear your silence. They cannot bear how quickly you see through their masks. They cannot bear that you require truth in a world that runs on performance. Only 1% of people who are shaped this way ever fully survive it. Not physically. Many survive physically, but spiritually, emotionally, truly. Most spend their entire lives in a quiet, invisible collapse, mistaking their exhaustion for personality, mistaking their loneliness for fate, mistaking their sensitivity for a curse. But you were not cursed. You were compressed. Compressed into a shape too small for the enormity of what you carry. And this conversation is about how you finally let that shape crack open so that the being inside can finally breathe. Carl Jung, whose work runs through the deepest currents of trauma psychology, said something that will hover over everything we speak of tonight. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You have been calling this fate, this loneliness, this sensitivity, this exhaustion, this way of loving people from a distance because closeness has always been dangerous. You have been calling all of it fate, but it is not fate. It is an unconscious inheritance. And once it becomes conscious, it stops being your prison and starts becoming your path. The path Jung called individuation, the sacred, terrifying, slow return of a human being to the self they were before the wound. Not to erase the wound, but to no longer be enslaved by it. And the trauma-born empath loner is one of the rare souls actually built for this journey, because you have already survived what most people cannot even face. Before we go deeper, I want you to do something small but real. Something that tells your own nervous system you are no longer willing to pretend. Something that marks this moment in the invisible field that holds all who are quietly, seriously waking up. Go to the comments and type 520. 520 is not a magical number. It is a signal, a marker, a quiet declaration from you to yourself that says, I see who I am. I see what I have been carrying. I am ready to stop hiding inside my own depth. Type 520. Let it be witnessed. And then return, because what follows may be the most important recognition of your adult life. Because there are unmistakable signs that you were shaped this way. Signs that you are not simply introverted, not simply shy, not simply sensitive, but something rarer, something forged, something that emerges only when a soul is asked to feel too much, too early, with no one there to hold it. The first sign is that solitude is not your preference. Solitude is your medicine. Other people relax by being with others. You relax by being alone. Not because you dislike people. You love people. You love them deeply, often more than they realize. But being with them costs you something they do not have to pay. Every interaction, no matter how pleasant, pulls energy from a well that never quite refills. So you retreat to your room, to your car, to your walks, to your quiet hours before the world wakes up. And in that solitude, something in you finally exhales, because it is the only place where you do not have to feel everyone else's feelings on top of your own. The second sign is that you feel other people's emotions as if they were your own. You walk into a room and know instantly who is upset, who is pretending, who is quietly falling apart behind their smile, not because you are trying to read them, but because their emotions land in your body before their words leave their mouth. This is not a gift you asked for. This is a skill that developed in a childhood where you had to know at every moment what the adults around you were feeling so you could adjust yourself to stay safe. Now, as an adult, that scanner never turns off, and every crowded space becomes a symphony of other people's pain that you did not consent to hear. The third sign is that closeness terrifies you as much as it calls to you. Part of you longs to be truly seen, deeply loved, fully known. Another part of you cannot tolerate anyone getting that close. Because in your earliest experience, the ones who were closest to you were also the ones who hurt you the most. Not always with cruelty, sometimes with neglect, sometimes with unpredictability, sometimes with love that came with too many conditions. So your nervous system learned that closeness equals danger. And even now, in adulthood, the moment someone truly begins to reach you, an ancient alarm goes off, and you pull away before you can even understand why. The fourth sign is that you have been quietly grieving your whole life, not always loudly, not always visibly, but there is a low, steady grief that hums beneath your days. Grief for the childhood you did not have, grief for the people who could not see you, grief for the versions of yourself you had to abandon in order to survive. Grief for a world that keeps praising surface things while your soul aches for depth. This grief is not depression. It is unfelt truth accumulating in your body. And until it is honored, it will keep leaking out as fatigue, as numbness, as sudden waves of sadness that arrive for no obvious reason. The fifth sign is that you have a private inner world so vast that most people would not believe it exists. You have entire universes inside you. Ideas, images, memories, longings, questions that no one has ever asked you. You have thoughts you have never spoken because you knew from painful experience that most people would not know what to do with them. And so you learn to keep your inner world hidden, beautiful and hidden, rich and hidden, alive and hidden. And that hiddenness has become one of the deepest sources of your loneliness. Not that you're alone, but that the real you has almost never been allowed into the room. The sixth sign is that your body has been carrying what your mouth was never allowed to say. The tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your jaw, the gut issues, the chronic fatigue, the strange nervous system responses that no doctor can fully explain. Trauma-informed psychology has repeatedly shown that the body stores what the mind is not allowed to process. And your body has been storing your entire life. All the words you swallowed, all the anger you did not express, all the boundaries you did not set, all the tears you did not cry because there was no safe place to cry them. Your body has been a faithful, silent witness, and it is asking now to finally be heard. The seventh sign is that you have always sensed you were here for something more, even when everything in your life told you to shrink. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the anxiety, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the isolation, there's a quiet knowing, a sense that your sensitivity was not a mistake, that your depth is not a defect, that your capacity to feel, understand, and see was placed in you for a reason. You have tried to dismiss this knowing. You have tried to be practical. You have tried to be normal, but it will not leave you alone, because it is not fantasy. It is the intelligence of your own soul, insisting on your becoming. If you recognize yourself in these signs, understand something clearly. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not too little. You were shaped by circumstances that would have crushed most others, and you found a way to remain alive, alert, and capable of love. That is not a weakness. That is one of the most extraordinary human accomplishments there is. And now, if you're willing, we walk into what most never dare to walk into. The step-by-step method that begins to complete what your trauma began. The path of becoming at last who you truly are instead of who you had to be. The first step is to stop treating your sensitivity as the problem. Your sensitivity is not the wound. Your sensitivity is the miracle that survived the wound. What is wounded is your relationship with your sensitivity. You were taught to see it as weakness, as inconvenience, as too much. Begin, slowly, to see it as sacred. Every time the world tries to shame you for feeling deeply, remember that people with your depth are the ones who quietly hold this world together. Your feeling is not a flaw. It is the form of intelligence most people never develop. The second step is to reclaim solitude as sanctuary, not as failure. The world will tell you that always being alone is a sign of something wrong. But for a trauma-born empath, deliberate, chosen solitude is often the deepest form of self-care. It is not withdrawal, it is restoration. It is not disconnection, it is reconnection to a self that was drowned out by everyone else's noise. Give yourself permission to protect your solitude the way another person might protect their sleep, because without it, you cannot remain whole. The third step is to feel the feelings you were never allowed to feel. The rage that had no safe home, the grief that had no witness, the fear that no one soothed, the longing that no one understood. These feelings are still inside you, waiting, not to overwhelm you, to be released. Begin small. Journal without editing. Cry when the tears come, without justifying them. Sit with your body when a wave rises and simply let it move through. Every feeling that is fully felt is a piece of the past that stops running your present. The fourth step is to build one relationship where you do not have to perform. You do not need many, you need one. One human being with whom you can be honest, awkward, silent, intense, tender, uncertain, real. It may be a therapist, it may be one friend, it may be one small chosen circle. In that relationship, practice being your true self in small increments, because the wound was inflicted in relationship, and the deepest healing must also happen in relationship. Every moment of being fully seen and not rejected rewrites something old inside you. The fifth step is to stop offering yourself as an emotional resource to people who cannot see you. You have been giving your depth to shallow rooms. You have been offering your empathy to those who would never offer it back. You have been carrying people who never even asked how heavy you were. This must slowly change, not with anger, not with revenge, simply with quiet, adult clarity. You are allowed to give less to those who cannot receive who you actually are. You are allowed to reserve your gifts for those who will not use them and disappear. The sixth step is to bring your inner world out of hiding in the smallest possible ways. Write one honest paragraph no one will read. Speak one true sentence in a safe conversation. Share one thought you would normally have swallowed. Create something, anything, that expresses even a fraction of what lives inside you. Because a person like you carries so much unspoken material that when it is never expressed, it turns inward as heaviness. When even a little of it comes out, the whole inner system exhales. The seventh step is to commit to becoming an ancestor of consciousness, not a transmitter of pain. The trauma that shaped you did not begin with you. It moved through generations to arrive at your body. And whether you choose to see it or not, you are the one being asked to metabolize what came before. Not because it is fair, but because you are equipped. Every time you feel instead of numb, every time you choose truth instead of performance, every time you refuse to pass on the coldness or the silence or the cruelty, you become the point in your family line where something ancient ends and something new begins. If you have followed these words to this point, something in you has already begun to change. Because the trauma-born empath loner does not fully wake up in loud moments. They wake up in quiet ones, in sentences that name what has always been felt but never said, in recognitions that finally arrive after decades of not being able to explain oneself. I want you to mark this moment. Go to the comments and type 11. 11 is the number of the threshold. It means you're standing at the doorway between the self you had to become and the self you were always meant to be. Type 11 to declare, I am no longer willing to disappear inside my own depth. I am ready to step out. I am ready to become. And if you wish, beneath 11, write one sentence. What is one part of your true self you have hidden for far too long? Let your nervous system witness your own commitment. Now hear this, because this is what I want you to carry with you long after these words end. You were not too sensitive. You were sensitive enough to survive an environment that most people would have collapsed inside of. You were not too intense. You were intense enough to keep feeling the truth in a world that kept asking you to numb. You were not too much. You were exactly enough for the life you were forced to live. And now at last you get to be exactly enough for the life you actually choose. Yes, only 1% survived this. But survival was never the destination. Awakening is. And awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about finally becoming, without apology, the being you have always been, beneath every mask, every adaptation, every silence you were forced to keep. The world will keep telling you to be careful with people like you. Let them. What they mean is that you have become too real to be manipulated, too awake to be controlled, too whole to keep abandoning yourself for their comfort. That is not a warning about you. That is a warning about what you can no longer tolerate. So take a breath. Feel the ground under your feet. Feel the quiet strength that has kept you alive through everything you were never supposed to survive. You are not alone in this frequency. There are others, rare, scattered, waking up in silence in rooms all over this world. And tonight you have joined them consciously for the first time. And as you walk forward, one honest step at a time, out of the shadow of your childhood and into the light of your own becoming, hold this truth in your heart, not as a slogan, not as a quote, but as the compass by which you will now live every remaining day of your life. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.